Warning: the following documentary contains foul language, content about drug abuse, and other sensitive topics. Viewer discretion is advised.
All of my themes for my music are, love, depression, drugs, addiction. Of course, a lot of fun old themes too. I try to keep it in that I try to play something that 100 years ago you could have listened to and said, man, this is popular stuff. There's nothing more impressive to me than one person with a guitar blowing your mind, you know? But at 15 years old in high school, I was getting into a lot of trouble, just kind of drinking a lot and just being, normal kid stuff. Dad ended up finding a pot plant that was out in the backyard. I called up my friends from Maryland and they came and picked me up. And so I spent 2.5 years just roaming around Maryland, causing a whole lot of fucking trouble. And at the time I was homeless, lost the job I had, started doing drugs. I was kind of sleeping in abandoned houses and things like that. I moved to Baltimore because I had a buddy who knew of a place for cheap. And so I started living there for a while. It's just ravaged by heroin. I mean, there's literally every block there are kids selling heroin. And when I say kids, I mean 10, 15-year-old kids selling heroin. While buying heroin one day, one of the kids goes, okay, D wants to talk to you. Fuck is D? Excuse my French. So I go home, and this man shows up at my doorstop. Well-dressed guy, probably mid-30s. So he comes up, and he starts talking to me. Just small talk. And then throws a bunch of heroin on the table. So yeah, he goes, you think you can get rid of this? I said, fucking sure thing. You throw an ounce of heroin in front of a fucking addict, they're gonna find a way to get that heroin. So I took it and started selling heroin to my friends. The first time someone ripped me off and I had to go collect for the guy, it was a little much for me. He goes, I owed him about $4.50. He goes, a guy who owes me $200, I just went over to his house earlier and threw him down his mom's stairs. And I'm like, fuck. Don't say anything. He goes, but I'd never do that to you because we're friends. Okay? He goes, cool. So you got that money tomorrow, right? I'm like, I got that money for you tomorrow. Had to go do some hairy shit to go get it, but I got it. That was the last time I sold heroin. At the time, I was 19, I believe. And then I met a girl. We were together for about 5 years. After a while, she graduated SCAD, and we decided, well, let's fucking go for a trip. We bought a van. We had been evicted out of our apartment so they could turn it into an Airbnb. So we converted it, although it didn't really need much. We just built a bed into it, camping stoves, that kind of thing. And we hit the road for 3 months. When you're stuck in a van with the person you love for that long, you start asking a lot of questions as to whether it's going to go well, what's going to happen. On the trip, I had proposed to her. Kind of in the back of my head, I knew it wasn't really going to work out. When you're afraid of losing something, you grab onto it tightly and you hold it as tightly as you can. We did basically a loop of the country, took our time. We slept in national forests mostly because they're free. Freecampsites.net, shout out. So I spent about my 25th year just smoking meth. I was offered some once, and I tried it, and I didn't stop smoking that shit for 8 months. I've had a lot of addictions. Nothing has ever ravaged me like that. As I recognized that was a problem and I quit that shit pretty smoothly. It took me a few months, but once I had quit, I was done. By that time, the damage was done with me and Mary's relationship. God bless her, she stuck with me until I got clean, and then was like, okay, this is over. So I moved to Vail for a while. There were people doing heroin in Vail, so I realized I shouldn't be around that. So I moved to Denver. After the first time it snowed, I said, fuck this shit. I moved back to Savannah, got a place with some friends, started working for a shipping warehouse for Smoke Cartel, and did that for a while remaining more or less on the straight and narrow. I started selling ketamine. It's a very interesting drug. There's kind of a wave of it going on right now. It's really scary to see, but this was before anyone was super aware of it. And to be honest with you, I hadn't really seen what ketamine addiction can do. Because again, it's a fairly new thing these days. People are just now being aware of what it can do to people. So I started off doing about 1 gram of it a day, and then tolerance builds fast, so it ended up where I was doing about an 8 ball a day. So I was doing about 28 grams within about 3 days. Keep in mind, the average dose of ketamine is about 1/10 of a gram. That's a high dose. But yeah, did that for a little while, realized what it was doing to my friends, my community, and just decided not to do that anymore. I'm just now really getting clean off of it. Once you've picked up an addiction like that, it sticks around with you for a while. Last year, we're almost at a year, we'll be at a year next month, I started dating Jade. And we had known each other for a long time. We just started hanging out a lot, and little by little I was like, oh, I'm in love with this girl. But I was still using ketamine. And getting together with Jade, I was like, okay, like, she wants to have children, she wants to have a family, and so do I. And so looking at all that, I said, okay, you cannot, like, you can't have a family if you're even trying to get off drugs. Like, we're looking, like, in years in the future, but still, like, now's the time to start thinking about pulling my shit together. Like, I'm 30 years old now, so, I mean, I don't really have an excuse anymore. She is pretty much my rock. She keeps me on the straight and narrow. She keeps me accountable. If I'm fucking up, she tells me. She's a great woman, and I want to spend the rest of my life with her. And so, with that, I decided to just kind of pull it together and stop fucking around so much. In the past few years, I've been putting a big focus on music. I've got probably about 2 albums worth of music almost ready. I've got one that's ready. It's a folk and country and blues album. Almost all original, with a few like old traditionals. I've also got probably about an album's worth of funk, blues, southern rock, that kind of thing. Allman Brothers meets like Motown type of stuff. My fondest memories in life always include music. I remember being 7 years old and my family gave me this plastic guitar. And then at 10, they bought me another guitar, like an actual one that actually worked. But of course, you're 10 years old, you're not gonna pick up a fucking guitar without having someone pushing you into lessons. But yeah, in my music, most of my themes are just what I know because I write a lot. And I've always written. I was always like, I was that guy who the English teachers were always my favorite. And like, I was best friends with all the English teachers, but my math teachers fucking hated me. You can't sit there and spend fucking 10 hours, 15 hours fucking a day or a week or however long you spend practicing and not be running from something, you know? There's something most people are trying to avoid when they throw themselves into music, and in a way, it'll make you face it. Because in a way, you'll be sitting there and you'll be playing, and your conscious mind, with all the anxiety, is worried about what note to hit. Your subconscious sitting there working through your issues. So yeah, I can come home crying my eyes out from a bad day and pick up my guitar, and within about an hour, I'm more or less at baseline. You know, I'm not sitting there crying anymore. I think that's one of the biggest parts about music too, is it's such a public service. Not to fucking toot my own horn or nothing, I'm saying musicians in general. It's a public service because when you are having the worst fucking day of your life, and you listen to something that commiserates with you, you know, it doesn't seem so lonely anymore. You don't seem like the only person going through what you're going through anymore. That's really important because, I mean, these days, there's just no emphasis on, in like small circle communities. Like it used to be, you'd live with your grandparents, you'd live with your parents, everyone kind of looked out for each other. There were small communities where you could be, you know, where you felt heard and seen, and, you know. Nowadays, everyone needs a therapist because we can't talk to people anymore, you know? And we can't talk to our friends about that. So I think music has that benefit. First of all, like, it makes you feel like part of a community. You know, me even just playing like country and folk music, when I go and I sit and I play with people who play country and folk, I know that they're going through the same feelings that I've gone through, and we can sit and talk for hours about it, you know? So yeah, in retrospect in my life, the biggest lesson I have learned is, first of all, persistence. Second of all, adaptability. And third of all, just being able to say, I fucked up. Recognize where you fucked up and recognize where you need help. And never be afraid to ask for help from support systems. That's what they're there for. My life has been a series of falls, peaks, and valleys. And every single time I've gotten back up on the horse. Even when I was smoking meth, I I thought I was done for. I thought I was done for. But just having that love in my life and having people telling me, dude, you got this, like, you're better than this, really helped. But I would not have gotten that support if I had not admitted there being a problem. So the biggest step to getting back on the horse is recognizing what the fucking problem is. Being honest with yourself and taking stock of your own shortcomings without running away from them. Not blaming people for where you're at, even if they are to blame. You're not going to get anywhere by sitting there being bitter at people. You're only going to get better by looking at what you have, what you can fix about it, and just doing it. It's really fucking difficult. It's fucking terrifying. And sometimes it means cutting very important people out of your life. Sometimes it means changing cities. Sometimes it means just taking a fucking dive. But here's the thing. If you wait until you're ready to do something, you'll never fucking do it. So just fucking do it. Just fucking send it. Like, I don't care what it is, just fucking do it. So, not to be like Shia here, but do it! I got so high, hit hard when I fell. Might have pulled a muscle or cracked my shell. Well, I'm a waxing poetic, flying on Icarus wings. When the bottom comes up, it feels black like licorice strings. You might be up, you might be down. Find yourself in the middle of town, just wandering, looking for a reason to live. You ain't gonna find one if you got none to give. Well, I'm a waxing poetic and flying on Icarus wings. Said I'm a waxing poetic, flying on Icarus wings. And when the bottom comes up, it feels black like licorice strings.